Hi, my name is Jim Reinheimer. I'm an educational consultant at Blast Intermediate Unit 17. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's topic is autism in the year 2020. I'm going to share my screen with you at this time. All right, here we go. Again, thank you. It's so great to share with you today. Today's objectives, I'm just going to give you an overview of the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorders, provide an overview of the background of autism, including communication, socialization, and behaviors, and to give you an update and maybe some helpful tools and resources to share with you throughout the year that we've been through in 2020. So a little quote, as many of you all know, Temple Grandin, diagnosed with autism. One of her famous quotes is, "Autism's an important part of who I am, but I'm a college professor and an animal scientist first. And I wouldn't want to change because I like the logical way I think." And I love that quote because it just brings apart as far as each and every one of us are unique and wonderful in our own way. And a student who may be diagnosed with autism, yes, they're diagnosed with autism. What are some of their other wonderful qualities that make them, that person? Okay. So what is autism? Autism is diagnosed, as far as the definition is concerned, is an increasingly prevalent developmental disorder that affects the way a person perceives and communicates with the world. So it's a spectrum disorder also that affects individuals differently and to varying degrees. It often results in challenges with social interactions and information processing. So autism is just so broad out there. And going into that, we have what's they came out with in 2017. There used to be the high functioning, low functioning. They now classify it as level 1 and level 3. So someone who may be higher functioning, that has more specific skills, maybe in socialization, comprehension, they might be more, let's say, at a level 1. Those are those students who may be, let's say, out in more of the general education classrooms. Someone with maybe level 3 is learning at a slower rate, may have more significant behaviors, for example, but like I said, it's so broad because no two individuals with autism present in the same way. So in my years as a teacher, I can never honestly say that I can compare this student to another student. And the other famous quote we always hear is, if you've met one person with autism, you met one person with autism. The rate for autism spectrum disorder in the population right now, as of 2020, and these numbers just came out in around March of this year, is 1 in 54. So an average, 1 in 54 will have some form of a diagnosis of autism. The average now is 1 in 34 boys and 1 in 144 girls. So this has been about a 10% increase from 2 years ago. So this is from the Center for Disease Control 2016. And it's interesting because it seems like it always goes back 2 years. So the statistics are always being updated. So we usually see a difference between 1 to 2 years that we'll see the numbers. So previously it was 1 in 68. Boys are 4 times more likely to be identified with autism than girls. Even though autism can be diagnosed as early as, let's say, 1.5 to 2 years old, most children were not diagnosed with autism by a community provider until after 4 years. So, of course, there are a lot more statistics that you can check out. You can check out the Center for Disease Control. So these were the latest statistics on March 26th of 2020. So the cdc.gov, as well as there's a lot of great information on autismspeaks.org. And here is just a little prevalence of 2020. As you can see here, we're looking at 1 in 54. And before that was 1 in 59. and then it was 1 in 68. So within every 2 years, we're seeing different changes in number. Autism is characterized by deficits in 3 major areas. So taking a look here at this graphic organizer here, autism can be characterized by differences in socialization, differences in behavior, differences in communication. So a student with autism can have all challenges and struggles in each of these 3 areas. It may just be, let's say, in 1 or 2. Maybe it's just in socialization, or maybe just working on the communication. It may also throw in some behaviors as well. So looking at communication, we see here that language is significantly delayed. So for some students, like I said, looking at your level 1 versus level 3, it depends on the student. So overall, here are some other characteristics that we will see as far as some do not have the spoken language. They may communicate in other ways. It may be through assistive technology. It may be through a picture exchange, maybe through signing. They may experience difficulty with both expressive and receptive language, being able to get the words, the communication out of their mouth for expressive, and far as taking in what is being said to them for receptive. They may have difficulty initiating and maintaining conversations. They may have that robotic formal speech monotone, usually that one tone of voice usually, or they a lot of times will repeat certain phrases and words, repetitive use of language, and difficulty with pragmatic use of language. As far as communication as well, you may see that their rhythm, pitch, inflection, and volume may be affected. The body language, facial affect, interpretation of nonverbal behavior of others. They may have concrete and literal thinking, difficulty understanding language with multiple meanings, such as humor, sarcasm, synonyms, idioms, metaphors. They're not going to be understand as far as if you try to tell them a joke, maybe say something that maybe in the form of sarcasm, or those metaphors. Like, for example, I remember one day I said to my students, "Oh my gosh, it is raining cats and dogs." And one of my students says, "I don't see any dogs." So I realized I probably should not have said that at this point. So that was just one example there. Processing time may be needed for understanding and comprehension. For students with autism, we may need to give a little bit more, let's say, wait time. Some other characteristics that we see with students with autism. So some students with autism are nonverbal. We've talked about the expressive language, the jokes, echolalia. Looking at maybe you would see some other self-stimming, maybe some chanting, humming, unique sounds. Difficulty asking or understanding intangible concepts. A lot of students, let's say, when, what, why. So something that's a little more abstract would be more of a challenge. Difficulty with imaginary and imaginary play. So these are some characteristics that we observe in social interaction. Lack of or limited eye contact. A lot of students with autism don't usually look at you in the eye. And I used to be one to say, always look at me, please. And I've learned that even though if they may not be giving you direct contact, they are hearing everything you're saying. So maybe that may just help them to feel a little more comfortable that they're not exactly looking at you. So just like many of us, we cannot always look at someone who may be presenting to us or trying to speak to us all the time. So we may have to look around as well. There may be limited ability to cope and manage anxieties and emotions. So at this point here, as far as if they're starting to feel a little more of an increase in anxiety and emotions for them, it may be a little more of a way of trying to like, how can I self-regulate at that time? So maybe just like trying to work on maybe just taking that deep breath, maybe counting to 5. Think of something positive in your life, let's say. So like we can try to work on teaching those skills. Limiting understanding of danger. So like not really understanding the amount of danger, like let's say if you walk out of a classroom or walk out of a house, like let's say in the kitchen, in other rooms of the house, that may be more danger. They're not really understanding that concept yet of that area. So understanding, interpreting thoughts, perspectives, and emotions of others, how others are feeling. Maybe they do not say hi back to you in return, and they're just thinking, why are they mad at me? So why aren't they talking to me? They may have difficulty understanding social appropriateness. So like what is appropriate versus what's inappropriate. So, and also I like to think of what's expected and what is not expected, what's unexpected, expected versus unexpected behaviors. So they may make inappropriate statements as well, not really understanding that it is inappropriate. So in this point, for many of us, as far as our brains, we learn how to filter what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. For students with autism, it may not be appropriate. They may exhibit socially unacceptable behaviors, not understanding social rules, for example, the waiting in a line, let's say interpreting, let's say facial expressions, those nonverbal communications. A lot of times it used to be our lips, and now in 2020, as far as wearing a mask, it might be our eye contact. Verbal communication as well. So sharing those emotions, eye contact, like we talked about that before, may not be as frequent. May not appear to notice others or seems to tune people out. A lot of times they may not build relationships with other students. They may not have many friends or maybe not even any friends. They may interact, let's say, more with adults first, or maybe some students with autism will always build that relationship with other students, but not with adults. So some maybe would prefer to talk to maybe a female or a male. They do not demonstrate emotional reciprocity, which means taking turns. So taking turns back and forth, they always have to be the one in charge, let's say. So it's like trying to work on those areas, let's say, of infrequently taking turns in play and conversation. A lot of times students with autism, we work on trying to take turns, let's say in a game, conversation back and forth. Knowing the signs as far as like when it's okay to like, okay, maybe I better allow the other person to start speaking or like not interrupt with them. They rarely initiate actions of others in play or other tasks and directions. They may not respond to their own name as well. Like I said, friends as well, that piece of it may be a struggle. They may not smile. And at this point, like I said, if we're wearing a mask, we're not really noticing that, but otherwise they may not smile a lot, but you know what? They may be very happy. So it's honestly, it's really getting to know our students with getting to know their characteristics. They may seem to prefer to play alone, have that imaginary play. Like I said, some are very active, very hyper, cannot sit still. They may be uncooperative or resistant, especially if it's something new. Maybe not to play with toys the way that we would play with toys or play with items. They have to be taught these skills and modeled by other peers and by classroom staff and teachers as well as families. They may be in their own world. A lot of times we think they are like they're having conversations, and it's like sometimes they're having that conversation of, let's say, a TV show that they like, for example. So sometimes we say that quote as scripting. They may not be interested in other children. Some are. Some are basically, I would like to say the quote, the mayor, because everyone knows that student because they have learned such wonderful communication and social interaction skills. So some strategies in socialization here. So for us, we have to remember not to take rude or aggressive behaviors personally. So like I said, they just may not have been taught that skill yet. Recognize the target for anger may not be linked to that source of that anger, maybe from something else. Maybe it was something that happened earlier in the day, maybe a different other person, maybe a transition. So I said maybe during, like for, let's say, another trigger that may have happened. Be aware students may feel uncomfortable with eye contact. So we have to kind of like accept that it's okay if they do not look at you. Work on reinforcing leisure activities. Continue to increase social reinforcers and activities. This one's very important, I like, because it is a great example as far as building their common interests. What do they like? What do they like to read about? What do they, let's say, like to look pictures of? Or what excites them? Because a lot of times we can talk about those areas and we can also include it, let's say, in our lessons. Pair existing reinforcers with new activities. Sometimes maybe for students who struggle with transition, maybe if they are able to work on something new or something that's maybe not really preferred, that they can pair it with something that they do like, that will help with the transition as well. So like for some of us, maybe if we do not like to write, maybe we can be writing a little bit and drawing a little bit on the side. Or maybe like let's say if I'm doing some work, I like to listen to a little bit of music. It keeps me moving in the right direction. They also have frequently and in detail teach social rules and skills such as turn taking, social distance. Some students with autism do not really know social distance. And right now, let's say in the year 2020, social distance we're trying to do, and students are still learning that concept. So let's say wearing the mask, staying 6 feet apart. So like maybe they do not understand 6 feet, but maybe they can understand, let's say 2 arm lengths away, for example. Or do you know what I mean? Like we can try to think of some other examples, or like seeing that visual, let's say a piece of tape on the floor, for example, or maybe some animated preferred pictures maybe to keep the space. Breaking down social skills into nonverbal and verbal components. A lot of students with autism are great with visuals. So a lot as far as breaking down and creating little lessons that way. Modeling these skills, that's how they learn. Explain rules and purpose behind social exchanges. So like, why are we doing this? Why are we having the social exchange? Why are we having to keep 6 feet apart? Why are we wearing a mask? Why are we always using hand sanitizer? Why are we, let's say, trying to raise our hand if we want to say something when there's other students in the room? So there's so many different examples we could say. Teach student to accurately label his or her emotions. This one's very important for students who may be acting out, maybe showing some disruptive or non-compliant challenging behaviors. Maybe they do not, like, what's the example behind happy? What's the example behind sad or frustrated? So it's like being able to teach them what frustrated means. We can act it out a little bit, and we can create some examples and some strategies as far as what we can do, let's say if we're frustrated. So using cartoon conversations, coping comics, stories to teach social responses. These are great examples. Be aware of teasing by peers. Teach and rehearse appropriate responses to bullying. Unfortunately, we cannot. We can try to avoid bullying for our students as much as we can, and for our children, and it will still be out there. So like, how can we teach them to respond appropriately, and maybe to just move on and not get into doing it right back with them as well, and then promoting more challenging behaviors. So, and teach in detail what is private versus public behaviors as well. Some other strategies: provide modeling role plays opportunities to teach social skills. Program for generalization of social skills across all contexts. So like, let's say it could be in the classroom. It could be, let's say, in the hallway, cafeteria. It can be, let's say outside on the playground. It can be at home. It can be just going on, let's say, in as far as transportation. There's so many different examples across many different environments. Build social interactions around common interests, as I just said to you before. So very important. Possible behaviors, it may be associated with autism, include anxiety. So students with autism, they may just be feeling anxious, anxiety, and that's why we're seeing those behaviors. It's not that they don't like you or they don't want to do the work. Maybe, you know, it might be that time of day. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to have to leave soon. And, you know, like there's so many other thoughts that are going on at this point with them. Some may struggle with executive functioning, and that could be a whole nother topic in another webinar in the future. But there's so many different areas of that. So person may be detailed focused, less able to see the whole picture. They may have maybe increased impulsivity, acting before they think. Difficulties in processing information. So it might be verbal, written, auditory, or experience. So like I said, some students, they do very well with visuals. Some do better auditory wise. So reduce safety awareness. Distractions due to sensory issues. So a lot of distractions going on in a room that most of us can handle. For some students with autism, they cannot. For example, right now, as I'm speaking to you, I am hearing the vent in the ceiling right now. It's not bothering me. Some days, if I was really trying to concentrate, it may affect me a little bit. Understanding the concept of time, knowing that we're going to have to leave in 30 minutes. Well, what exactly is 30 minutes? Let's say like knowing what's morning, afternoon, night. There's so many different examples of time and let's say first and next. Lack of understanding of words and expressions as well. So here, how can we be supportive? Always connect with your students. Connect with your students, build that trust, build the rapport with them, as well as the families. Let's say, as far as make families, let's say make those phone calls, not just emails. Build that relationship with the family as well. Check in with them and students. I think about, for example, especially in 2020, if for many students who were learning remotely at home, that's not something they're used to. Students with autism, this is something brand new for them, for the families as well. So there's going to be a lot of different emotions, different behaviors, trying to continue to rebuild the trust, having the connection. It's so very, very important. And even sometimes just checking in with the families. How are you doing today? It's okay. If you're frustrated, it's okay. I understand. What can I do for you? What can I do to help you? So sometimes maybe they will say there's nothing, but you know what, just thanks for asking. So that's so very, very important, making that connection. What additional ideas do you have on how we can continue to connect with others during this time? So like if there's some other ideas that you have, I would love to hear them. That's in my contact information at the end of today's webinar. So some other continued best practices. Strive to maintain consistency for students with autism. They do well with consistency. Some do not do well. Some you can begin to change it up a little bit and just have some other plan A, plan B, for example, what we can do. Give advanced warning and take the time to prepare the student for changes in routine and schedules. Very important. Using visuals, very, very important with students, especially to help remembering. It can be in the classroom, it could be on their desk in their area that they're working. Keep distractions and outside stimulation to a minimum during learning. So as much as we can, try to avoid that outside extra distractions. As always, we're learning how to become more and more flexible. Always make it comfortable for the student. You can work with them in small increments to provide frustration and challenges. Think about maybe, for example, how long can they work? If they work, let's say, well for 12 minutes, and then you start to see increases in challenging behaviors, you may want to work with them, let's say, for 10 minutes and say, you know what, you've been doing such a great job for these last 10 minutes. I'm going to give you a 5-minute break. So like, for example, like we always, and then we could always try to build it up then. Some other considerations. Continue reviewing when being taught social skills. It's not something you're going to learn one time. It's going to take a lot of repetition, a lot of reviewing, a lot of practice, as well as positive behaviors, as well as academics. It's just like when we're trying to go over new material. It just has to be taught and retaught. And keeping calm may help to de-escalate situations. Sometimes maybe just not saying anything for a moment, just to think about, okay, how am I going to handle this? What is the best way at this point? Try to incorporate students' interest in learning. Try to use some parts of your everyday schedule to help ease changes. Try to keep and follow a consistent schedule as much as possible. But it's also a great idea to include the student or your child to brainstorm a schedule for the next day. Include them with some of the changes as well. Strategies for success, always, no matter what, we try to always be calm and positive. If we need to take that minute and just take a deep breath. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Modeling, let's say, for example, let's take a moment right now. What are 3 things that you're seeing right now? What are 3 things that you're hearing right now? What are 3 things that you're feeling right now? A little bit of just that little check in with the student. You know what I mean? It's so very, very important. Sometimes we just need to, especially if we're building anxiety, you know, maybe we just need to just take that minute, okay? And that's perfectly fine to do. Model appropriate behaviors for students with autism. So modeling has been so important. And it's always like, watch what you see and do, because little eyes are always watching you. It's a little quote that I always like to think and say, because like, how is my interactions, how is my behavior at this point? Build students with autism for better attention to group and learning activities. We can continue to build that. Be aware of sensory issues that may affect them. So we're learning it may be behavior, but it may also be due to sensory as well. Provide written rules or pictures for expectations of behavior. We also want to do is we want to keep those expectations positive. So like we just want to say, for example, raise your hand. We just want to say, you know, like using kind words, walking, like just something that will be proactive behavior. Descriptive praise. For example, I like the way you put the trash in the trash can instead of something vague such as good job. We want to be specific on what they did that we liked. And by doing that, that will also help teach them to be the same way in the future. So give those positive directions. Clearly describe your expectations. Tell them what to do instead of what not to do. It may be necessary to wait for a response, use an alternative communication device or strategy such as picture exchange. If they struggle telling you at that moment what they need, maybe at this point, you know, it's okay. Use your device, use a picture, okay? Take a minute, okay, and tell me, it's okay. I'll wait, allow that wait time. Collaborate with parents that age or modify curriculum and materials. Anything you try, I always say, please make sure that you follow through with other classroom staff as well as the families. A lot of families that I've worked with is like, please tell me what you're doing in the classroom because I'll do the same thing at home. That's where we start to see a lot more success happening for our students. So I'm getting toward the end here now. So what I want to do is I want to just share with you a couple of resources that are linked here that you can check out. One of them is a video from Chris Ulmer, who is one of my favorite inspirational speakers, former teacher. He had a student diagnosed with autism when he was in the classroom. He just recently, in fact, it was yesterday, that I just happened to see this video, and I thought I'm going to include this for you to see. And it's just like a little check-in years later with him. Another student, this is through Autism Speaks, Meet Jack, little story to watch, and as well as prioritizing self-care while working from home. For some of us, let's say if we're working, whether we're working in schools, if we're working at home remotely, virtually, well, always remembering to take that self-care for ourselves so that we can always do our best for our students. Assert, that is bringing autism resources together. There's a great resource page here, has resources for all these individuals, educators, and a lot of it is as far as related to 2020 as well. EAautism.org has additional materials for 2020, health and safety guides. It also includes as far as resources, self-care, other methods of help. Always, you could check out Autism Speaks. All you need to do is go on here and just click. If you click on the link, it should take you right to Centers for Disease Control as well as far as autism, and going back to Kids Health and Search for Autism. So of course, if you ever have any questions, please reach out to me. I would love to hear from you, as well as I continue to build more topic areas to discuss with you, other areas that if you would like to see. If you would like me to discuss with you, please reach out to me. My email address is jreinheimer@iu17.org. My office phone number is 570-323-8561 extension 1049. I would love to hear from you. Comment as far as even like any strategies you've been using in the classrooms, or let's say, or parents, like what do you use that's working? If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to support. So again, thank you so much for watching today's webinar, and I hope you have a nice day and take care.